Welcome back, historians. Mia, where's your zapper? The last time we saw you, you were threatening to zap kids into snails. Oh good, we're back on the playground, and no snails in sight. It looks like some other kids are starting a game of soccer. Mia, maybe you should join. While Mia watches this game unfold, let's talk about a time when the United States had to decide if it would join a much larger game, the Great War, better known as World War I. The goals of our game today are to describe the impact of military alliances in World War I, find out why the U.S. was neutral for most of the war, and discover what led America to finally join the great game of World War I. Let's get into it. Before we look at America's decision to join the war, let's talk about how it started. In our last lesson, we learned about the Great White Fleet. America was showing off its strength and, well, a lot of other countries were too, especially in Europe. Many countries worried that this show of strength would cause conflict. So, countries began to form alliances, which are partnerships between countries who agree to protect each other in the event of a war. Just as kids pick teams for soccer, countries form teams to make them stronger. By the start of World War I, there were two teams, each with some pretty strong players, the Central Powers and the Allied Powers. Pause here to color a map of these alliances in the PDF. With the teams formed, it was only a matter of time before the game began, and in 1914, the game started with an aggressive first kick. Whoa! Archduke Franz Ferdinand, who was going to be the next leader of Austria-Hungary, was assassinated by a Serbian. Well, Serbia had allies, and Austria-Hungary had allies, and their allies had allies, and eventually, most of Europe was involved. Because of alliances, a conflict between two countries turned into a global war. So, thinking about what happened after Franz Ferdinand's assassination, what do you think are the benefits and risks of alliances? By being in an alliance, countries get benefits like military protection and economic help, but they might also have to give up the freedom to make their own decisions. And, as we've seen in World War I, alliances can cause a domino effect, where countries who might not have been involved in the event that starts a conflict are obligated to intervene. Pause here to look at how this image represents this domino effect in the PDF. Let's check on this soccer game. Wow, the red team is being really aggressive. Oh yikes! Mia, I think the green team needs help. Should you grab your zapper? If you were Mia, would you intervene? Well, as the war raged on in Europe, Americans watched nervously as the Central Powers became more and more aggressive. However, Americans wanted to avoid the conflict because they knew the risks that can come with joining alliances. President Woodrow Wilson declared that America would maintain neutrality, meaning they would not get involved in either side of the conflict. Countries often remain neutral to avoid being dragged into wars that might not directly concern them, or to prevent unnecessary loss of life and resources. And, until 1917, Americans saw the Great War as a distant conflict. Many said, "That's Europe's problem, not ours." America's decision to remain neutral reflects a debate that nations often face, the choice between protecting itself and protecting foreign nations. If we think back to our soccer game, If Mia stays out of it, she can protect herself from injury, but the green team will continue to be pushed around by the red team. If Mia joins, she could help protect the green team, but would face the aggression of the red team herself. Throughout history, America has grappled with when and how to intervene in conflicts. Prior to World War I, the U.S. had a long-standing tradition of avoiding alliances in order to protect its independence. But many believe that as a democratic nation, America has a responsibility to promote democracy and protect the world from tyranny. Do you think the U.S. has a responsibility to protect foreign nations, or should it avoid getting involved? Let's check in on the soccer game and see if Mia has decided to join. It looks like Mia's remaining neutral, but uh-oh, some of the red players are threatening Mia. Oh, watch out! Now that Mia has been directly impacted by the red team's aggression, do you think she should join the game? Well, by 1917, Americans faced a similar decision as Germany began threatening Americans' safety. But Germany wasn't using soccer balls, they were using submarines. Germany had a strategy called unrestricted submarine warfare. This meant their submarines would sink any ship, even non-military ones, without warning. In 1915, Germany sank a British passenger ship, the RMS Lusitania, which had 159 Americans on board, 128 of whom were killed. Americans were outraged. Many began to think that it might actually be a good idea to enter the war to stop Germany's aggression. But President Wilson chose to fight with words instead, demanding Germany end its submarine warfare. Considering the risks that come with alliances, but also the direct impact the war has now had on America, do you agree with Wilson's decision to maintain neutrality? As tensions rose, the American media began to publish the atrocities of the war, depicting Germany as a monster. Think about Mia's situation in the soccer game compared to the man in this image. As German aggression increased, like the red soccer team, America, like Mia, had to decide if it would join the fight or risk being threatened again by Germany. It seemed America was beginning to take sides in this game after all. It was only a matter of time before Wilson's hope for neutrality would be shattered. And indeed, one final threat would convince the president to enter the Great War: the Zimmermann telegram. This was a secret message in which Germany asked Mexico to form an alliance and promised they would help Mexico take territory like New Mexico, Arizona, and Texas from the U.S. The American public was ready to fight back and stop the aggression once and for all. The president was now convinced that entering the war was the only way to protect America. So, in April 1917, the U.S. joined the Allied powers and declared war on Germany. It seemed the risks of remaining neutral now outweighed the risks of joining an alliance. When Woodrow Wilson announced the U.S. was joining World War I, he said, "The world must be made safe for democracy." What do you think he meant by this? Well, Germany and most of the Central Powers were run by authoritarian governments. An authoritarian government is when one person or a small group of people have all the power in a country and can make any decision they want, even without the people's approval. Under these leaders, people's freedoms are limited, and they might not be allowed to disagree with those in charge. Wilson wanted to join World War I to rid the world of authoritarianism. He believed that a world dominated by democracy would be a more stable, peaceful place where everyone had guaranteed rights and freedoms. By helping the Democratic Allies defeat the authoritarian Central Powers, the U.S. could help shape the post-war order in a way that would prevent future conflicts and spread democratic values. In our next lesson, we'll look at what happened after World War I and the role of Woodrow Wilson in shaping the democratic post-war world and attempting to prevent another global war. Spoiler alert, it won't exactly be a happy ending. Oh, we should probably check on Mia. Wow, it looks like Mia has joined the green team and they're winning now. Mia, where did those snails come from? Oh boy. We'll see how this game plays out in our next lesson. Until then, always remember, shaping the future begins with understanding the past. Hey, hey.